Good morning, brothers, sisters, and seekers of every nation, tribe, and tongue. So, I don't know if you saw my community post or not, but I said I was going to do a review on the movie Sinners. I actually watched it last night. I was scrolling through and came across my Prime Video, and sometimes I forget I even have it, and then I saw that that movie was on Prime. So I said, you know what? I'm going to watch it. And I hesitated for a minute for obvious reasons. And okay, if it's not so obvious, let me tell you why. When the movie first came out, I said, okay, I'm not going to watch that movie. Um, I'm a dreamer, so I'm sensitive to images and imagery. And what can happen is my dreams can become defiled, they can become polluted. So, with that type of sensitivity level, I have to be careful in the things that I watch and consume, from movies to music to things like that. And not that I it's not healthy if it's hypersensitivity, because God's not in that, because then it becomes fearfulness. And so that's been a battle with me in my spiritual walk, where I've had to come out of agreement with certain people, because kind of find out some people, you'd have to look through my playlist. Some stuff I go into explanation about, but just it all depends on how God uses you and how God speaks to you sometimes, and you have to stay pure in certain ways, right? So, and I'll leave it there. But anyway, so I avoided it based on being a dreamer, and then I avoided it also based on some of the warnings that people were giving. They were saying, don't watch this movie, you'll invite spirits into your home, and so on and so forth. And fast forward, I think it's been maybe at least a year by now since or okay, it's been what, 11 months, almost a year since this movie came out. Um, Other things have taken place. I've made different conclusions about certain individuals, and not to say we're not to pray for each other and continue to love each other. And I'm not saying nobody is not of the kingdom. I'm not saying anything like that, but just saying I don't respect their voice anymore. I don't respect their opinion. I don't care what they say. Like, I'll take it to God for myself. And that's what I did. So when I saw this, and I said, I want to watch it. And then I said, well, let me pray. And so I prayed first, and I said, Father, if when I'm watching this, if you pull on me to just turn it off, I will. I'll turn it off immediately. Because one thing I'm going to let you guys know about vampire movies, and I didn't realize it was a vampire movie either, by the way. But and we'll get into that too. It's a little more than that. But one thing about it is, many years ago, you know what? We'll talk about that in a minute. I'm going to go into that whole uh, discussion on vampirism. But let's talk about this movie, Sinners. Okay, so now I will say this. I admittedly, I I can zone in and out of stuff very easily, because I'm always doing something. I'm working on this. I'm working on that. This is playing in the background. So the very beginning of the movie, like I saw the scene where the young man, he plays the guitar, which, by the way, that's my instrument of choice. I love the guitar. The guitar is amazing. So I me and the guitar, that's my instrument. So anyway, um the and we'll talk about that another day too. But so the young man walks in. He's a aspiring musician. And anyway, he walks into a church, and you can see he has this huge scar on his face. He's tattered, he's torn. He walks into his father's church, and he's just, you can tell he's been through something. Something has happened, right? And so then the movie takes out of that scene, because it's like one of those. It starts out where it's like it takes you to the end first, and then it takes you to the beginning, and then you start going through the scenes, to find out, well, how do we get back to the ending? What all has happened? Okay, so this young man is a church boy. Okay, he's a church boy. His father's a pastor. He's a aspiring musician. In other words, he wants to get out there and out in the world and do his thing, right? And he's linked up with these twins, and these twins, and this is where I kind of zone in and out. Okay, so I know the twins are brothers. Well, obviously they're brothers. They're twins, and they're more worldly. I feel like there's not too much of a, you don't feel too much of a church background there. And one of the brothers is linked up even with a hoodoo woman. I believe she either is practicing voodoo or she's practicing hoodoo, but I think it was hoodoo. And so she's doing her roots and her magic and all this stuff, and it's supposed to be like, she was one of the characters in the movie. Okay, now we're gonna talk about all this. So anyway, this young man links up with these twins, and they're these aspiring musicians, from what I can tell, and they want to be, famous and what have you. And he's the guitarist; he plays the guitar, and I think he sings too, and everything. And then it's set in, like, the setting is like during what was that? Maybe the 20s? It was during the Klan era for sure. So he implements also some of the, like, you can see like that country look where, there's no business, no industry yet. It's just, very country, a lot of country road. And I love movies like that, right? I love movies like that. So a lot of country road, and just, you can see that old time look and stuff. I like those type of movies, that look to it anyway. And so what ends up happening, to put it in a nutshell, okay, what ends up happening is the young man is warned by his father that, hey, you're going to get out there, the world's going to eat you up, the devil's going to spit you out. That was the central theme of the movie. And he does just that. He gets out there, he's out connected to these more worldly-ish type of people, and all hell breaks loose, literally hell. Okay? All hell breaks loose. So he runs across, they're in this club, and they're doing their thing where all of the sin is going on, right? The movie Sinners, right? All of the sin is going on. It's not just dancing and all that. It's, sexual immorality. You got women cheating on their husbands. All of these things are going on in this environment. Let me tell you guys something. This is reality, right? Okay, let's get to let's get to, again, now keep in mind, this is a preacher's kid. Okay? So the world does just that. Eats him up. And then the devil literally shows up. Literally, the devil shows up. This is the vampirism. So the devil's running rampant through this town. It never gives context as far as like how anyone turned into a vampire to begin with. But the devil does run through this town. He runs through the town, and these people are getting bitten, right? They're getting bitten and they're getting affected, right? And so it's like becomes a fight of survival. Okay, it becomes a fight of survival to not to lose their own lives, right? The remaining characters, which it gets down to only 2 survivors, him and one of the twins. So anyway, what ends up happening in the end, okay, is the preacher's kid. He ends up, after a very strong fight with all of this evil, right? He gets just completely just mauled, right? Like he's fighting for his life. But he ends up going back to his father, to that church where his father receives him, and his sex says, put the guitar down, son, put it down, and hugs on his son. The central message of that movie was the prodigal son, you guys. Now, I'm not saying to watch it. I'm not going to say that. There is vampirism in the movie. There are images. Maybe you can't handle it. Okay. And maybe the Holy Spirit will say, no, don't touch that. Don't look at that. Okay. And if that's the case, don't touch it. Don't look at it. Okay. But I prayed. And I said, Father, if I shouldn't even watch this. If I start looking at something and you're pulling on me, I'll turn it off. Right. And then I also said, okay, other thing is, let my dreams be protected. Let me, sleep in peace. And I did. Okay. Didn't have no kind of nightmare, nothing. And I'm going to get into why that's important when it comes to this. So that was the central message in the movie. A prodigal son. That was the central message. Okay. Now I'm going to say that. That was the central one. Here are some hidden messages though that I noticed that a lot of Hollywood and a lot of these filmmakers, they're incorporating a lot of witches and witchcraft into their movies, right? Also vampirism. Okay, so this is where it gets demonic. This is where it's satanic. This is where I understand a believer, a brother or sister saying, don't watch it. I get it. Okay, because just the imagery and also just what it means, what it stands for. But one thing I'm gonna say with the hidden messages, what I noticed that filmmakers and Hollywood is doing a lot of is they like to glamorize witchcraft. They like to present the witches as these very intelligent, very they present them like they are wise, they are gentle, they are just very genuine, and that is not the reality of witches. That's the thing. God said witches are, in the old covenant, witches couldn't even live. Why? Because they are wicked women. And that is the thing I don't like at all, is that that's not a true message of witches. Witches hex people, they vex people, they try to steal people's husbands and boyfriends, they do love spells, they it's very self-centered, very self witchcraft and the things that come with that. It's all about bending the will of somebody else. It's all about bending the will of somebody else or hurting somebody. Somebody made you mad, so now you're going to hex them, cause them to get into a car accident, cause them to lose their life, touch their children. Okay, and we know these things are true even by some of their confessions when they come out of it. And even by some of them who are still in it, who they feel like they're not bad. They feel like, I practice the good magic, even though we know it's all from the same source, right? But in their heart, they're thinking they're doing good things, right? So what do they tell us? They've told us, like, man, listen, these witches are in a room, hundreds of them, spilling curses out on your children, looking for pictures of your kid. That's wicked. That is a vile, filthy woman. That's gross. Also, I know what it smells like. God let me smell it, and I have a playlist on that. It's disgusting, right? It stinks. That's why a lot of them deal with vaginal odors. We can get into it, right? But anyway, the romanticizing of witchcraft and witches in general is fake. That's just fake. But a lot of these movies do that. They try to present them. They almost try to present them the way you would present a daughter of God. Like, a daughter of God is beautiful. A daughter of God is powerful. A daughter of God has a beautiful spirit and a beautiful heart, or should. Okay, but which is not so. Not so. And I'm not saying, they're redeemable. They're redeemable, and I'm not saying that, it's to be like the old covenant where they weren't supposed to live anymore. But what I am saying is why God said it. Why God said, no, they can't even stay here, because of what they were doing to people. And like, for people to get hit spiritually with all kind of devastation, right? Boom, boom, boom. Something's happening in their family. Something's happening in their business, something. And they don't know what it is. They just think, oh my gosh, just things are going wrong for me. To come to find out, somebody got your name in a jar somewhere. Somebody done consorted with a spirit. So that's wicked, but you don't know it because they do it in secrecy. They're very, very secretive about it, right? So that's why we thank God for the Holy Spirit that reveals all things to us, okay? But that's one thing I notice Hollywood does with witchcraft. Okay, the other thing Hollywood is doing, they're trying to present the it's like there's this rebranding that they're trying to do with the Black American community, who's always been known to be extremely Christian, right? Not necessarily in perfection, but most of us born into it. But they're trying to make it seem like that isn't the reality, like it's always been hoodoo. That is not true. Like maybe there were pockets of people practicing hoodoo, but it wasn't mainstream. It wasn't major like that. Like, I just learned what hoodoo was maybe within the last 2 years. So it wasn't like, oh, this is something Black Americans been doing all along. That's just not true. And a lot of these, let me see, I'm going to pull up hoodoo. And a lot of these, hoodoo origins, a lot of these influencers, because they're tapping into witchcraft, a whole lot of people are tapping into witchcraft right now. It's very popular. A lot of, well, I won't say a lot, but there are some major influencers with a pretty known channels that are pushing hoodoo onto the Black American community and kind of trying to draw Black Americans into that. Tariq Nasheed, straight warlock. And even though Tariq is funny, Tariq is charming, and all of those type of things, and I pray for Tariq because there's something in his spirit that I know. Nah, he don't come from that either. He don't really come from that. It's something he's tapped into, but I know his family's praying for him, right? I can sense it. So I pray for him too. But the thing with Tariq Nasheed, he was like the one who had put out all of those films, Hidden Colors and all that kind of stuff. So he got really popular for a time. And I never even watched that stuff. I never watched any of it. But there was a time or two I would hear some of his videos and stuff, and he was kind of funny and stuff like that. But then all of a sudden he started talking a whole lot about hoodoo, and every single time it's like hoodoo this, hoodoo that, and I'm like, oh, he's a warlock. Okay, got it. So anyway, okay, here's the hoodoo is a set of spiritual observances, traditions, and beliefs, including magical and other ritual practices developed by enslaved African Americans in the southern United States from, let's go ahead. This is Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not really the best source of information. Yeah, so other names, voodoo, voodoo, Gullah voodoo. Okay, if y'all know what the Gullah is, that's in South Carolina, I believe. Root word conjure, hoodoo, juju. I mean, it's voodoo by another name. That's all that it is. Now, I want to know when it started. Hoodoo, da, da, da. So I get the impression it gives me is that maybe there were some Black Americans, because if you look at the Gullah, like they're really not. It's almost like they preserve their Africanness more so than the typical Black American. The typical Black American is extremely admixed, right? And like I said, also mostly Christians. So okay, let me see. The Code Noir was implemented 1724 in French colonial Louisiana. And as we know, Louisiana is kind of the hub for a lot of like straight up voodoo, like occultism and stuff like that. But my whole point is this. The point I'm trying to make is that they're trying to what they're trying to do is they're trying to embed it into our culture. And they're trying to make it look like hoodoo was always our system. When I don't believe that that's true. I have to do more research on like as far as like dates and stuff like that. But we've been Christians for hundreds of years. Again, there are some people they never it went down through their generations because they stayed closer to the root, the African root, perhaps. But that's not most of us. It just isn't. It's not most of us. And don't ever let them try to downplay hoodoo either, because I noticed too that people who practice hoodoo, they like to try to downplay it as if like, oh, it's nothing, it's not like it's not like voodoo. Yes, it is. It's the same thing. It's just an offshoot. Yeah, you're still talking to spirits. You're still conjuring. You're still engaging with a dark force in the spiritual realm. You can get upset when we say demons all you want to. It's not the Spirit of God. It is not the Spirit of God. And this is why so much evil comes out of it. You do evil with it. You do wickedness with it. Okay, now there are, of course, people that are going to say, oh, they do their money rituals and they do all that kind of spell work for that type of stuff. Okay. And anyway, we know that typically it's always to put a curse on somebody. It's always to do something to another person or to take something from another person. Okay. God's not in none of that. Okay. So anyway, that's the hidden message. So, glamorizing witchcraft, glamorizing hoodoo into the Black community. those are the hidden messages that are being pushed. We need to be aware of this type of thing because we need to know what to be praying about too. And I'm not saying watch the movie. We have to watch everything just to know. No, I'm not saying that at all. But that's the type of stuff that we're looking at. Okay. Glamorizing witchcraft, glamorizing hoodoo, because Ryan Coogler is a Black American filmmaker. Okay, so vampires. Let's talk about this thing with vampires. There's a big pushing with vampires, especially a few years ago. Oh my goodness, I want to say maybe like around 2012, something like that. Vampirism was a huge thing, right? Like vampire movies were everywhere and they were so romanticized. And it was a definite chink in my armor when I was watching them, because I was watching Vampire Diaries. I was watching Vampire Diaries, y'all. I was so hooked onto some Vampire Diaries because it's so romanticized. So you're thinking like you just watching this like you're just watching a romance. No, no, that stuff is very, very demonic. And then you come to find out real witches put these movies together. Real witches do real spells. Real, like they're really incorporating real witchcraft into these series. And I didn't know that at the time. It was ignorance, but yeah. And so what I would do though, like when the witch would start chanting and she'd start doing like her chants and her spells, I fast forward past it, right? We'd sit there, me and my nephew, because me and him would sit there and watch them together, and we'd be like, oh, fast forward past that part, and we'd fast forward past it. But if you got to do all that, don't even watch it, right? And so that's what I was hooked onto. Vampire Diaries. I was watching that one, and Twilight. I was watching some Vampire Diaries and some Twilight. I owned the Twilight series. I have since thrown them out. But let me tell you something. Vampirism is a real thing. It's like, okay, so vampirism, it's like on the okay, put it this way, you got the occult, and then you got like the black market occult, right? Like the occult's already dark, right? That's what it means, hidden. But then you have something it's even more hidden than the regular just hidden stuff, like, and that's vampirism. So it's when in zombieism too. So when we look at it from the spiritual perspective of it, these are people who give their entire body to the devil. They give their entire body to the devil, and they're like supposed to be being reserved for end time. It's crazy. It's craziness. Now, how I found out a little bit more of the details of that is through the book He Came to Set the Captives Free, because that woman, Rebecca Brown, MD, that woman who was called Elaine, who tells the story, who was deeply, and she was in the deep black market occult type stuff. She gave a lot of the secrets, which today she's dead now. She went through a lot of fighting because she was so like infused with demons, so that even when she gave her life to the Lord, it was a process for her. It was a process. I mean, her soul was saved, but and her spirit was renewed. Well, her soul was saved and she was renewed, spiritually. However, there was still so many layers. There were so many layers because of how deeply involved in the occult she had been, and for so many years, in fact. But she tells a whole lot of the secrets, and one of the things she talks about is vampirism. Okay, so a lot of these movies are pushing vampirism they're putting it into their movies. Now I will say in Sinners, again, I believe the vampires just represented the devil, and the devil taking over those people. Because again, the central theme of the movie was the prodigal son. So it's like when his dad said, the devil's going to come for you. That's how the devil came, through vampirism. Okay. But yet there's still some kind of, it's still a little dark, extremely dark, in fact. And it was all cultures. That was the thing. It was all cultures. It was white folks, black folks, Asian folks, right? It was all racial groups being infected by this demonic presence. Okay. So I think that was I can see where the writer was going with it. I could see what his, I can see where he was going with. I could see the messaging. Instead of us being sanctimonious and standing on a soapbox, how about we pray that because he's a great writer, we pray that, hey, bring that talent over here to the kingdom. You know what I'm saying? Bring it over here to the kingdom, and also pray for him because we don't know what his background is. You can kind of tell how people write that they probably have a certain type of background, which I'm going to go ahead and say Christian. And so pray for him that maybe he's the prodigal son. You understand? So, anyway, there was something else I wanted to say. I wrote some of this down. So I talked about the vampirism. And, so the last thing I'm going to say about the vampirism. So after when I had watched, back in the day, watching Vampire Diaries and Twilight, and I got rid of all that stuff, and I repented, and I renounced, and I wouldn't watch other stuff like that one, because there was a time where all that witchcraft was out there. The one with the four sisters and they were witches, Charmed. I think that's the name of it. I would never watch that. Like, I didn't watch stuff like that, but for whatever reason, I'd watch the vampires. It's like I played the vampires down in my head for whatever reason. But I wouldn't watch the other stuff. But anyway, and I could tell you too, one time I fell asleep when Charmed came on the screen. I fell asleep because, like I said, I didn't watch Charmed. I didn't watch anything to do with witches. But one time I fell asleep, and in my dream, while the show was playing, I saw 4 flies. I think it's 4 sisters. If it's 4 sisters, then I saw 4 flies. If it's 5 sisters, then I saw 5 flies. However many number of them sisters it is, they were the flies. So basically, just God showing me, or just translating into my dream as this filth is on, right? This uncleanness is here. Okay, so anyway. Oh, so back to the vampires. So now this happened during the summertime, where this girl who was braiding my hair, she put on Vampire Diaries. She was watching it. Now, like I said, Vampire Diaries is old, but she was just getting into it. And so she was playing it, and I was like, oh, I don't watch this. And she was like, why? I said, no, I just don't watch anything, dealing with like vampires and stuff. And I don't think I gave her details. But I thought, well, you know what? I thought to myself, well, you know what? I'm in her house. She's braiding my hair. I can't really tell her to turn the channel, whatever. So I just didn't say anything else. I just was like, just told her I don't watch it, but whatever, you go ahead, braid my hair, do what you got to do. Now, you have to keep in mind, that's like 6 hours to be sitting there, okay? Because it takes a long time to braid my hair. 6 hours of me sitting there, 6 hours of this series is playing. Let me tell you something. If it wasn't that night, it was the next night. I had the absolute worst dream I have ever had in my life. I never had a dream like this before. Never, 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 never. It was so satanic and demonic. And there was BLOOD everywhere in the dream. Everywhere in the dream. There was mockery against God in the dream. Oh my God, it was hideous. I woke up shaking. And I realized something, because I had renounced that show, said I'd never watch it again, and I did it. And didn't by my own will, or I should say I didn't put it on to watch it. She was watching it, but still, because I had closed that door, right? Woo, my God. I never, to this day, and in that in that dream too, the devil showed up in the dream, right? So I told her, so the next time she did my hair, I said, I can't watch that. I said, if you're going to watch it, then I can't. And she was like, oh no, we don't have to. And she didn't put it on. She she would start playing. Actually, she started playing like worship music. And I told her what happened. And then she said, you know what? She said, in the next series, she said, in the next show, after you already left, in the next show, the devil did show up. I said, see, I'm too sensitive for that kind of stuff, right? So anyway, I say all that to say, yes, vampirism is definitely demonic, is definitely satanic, definitely stay away from it, right? Now, in this particular movie, like I said, I think the message was the vampires were used more so to just represent the devil and to represent the disease of the sin spreading amongst the people. But still, I cannot, I can't say to watch it. I can't advise that. I can't do that. I could never do that. All I can say is that the central theme though was a prodigal son. That was a central theme. But however, there are heavy elements of the occult. Heavy elements of the occult. And I would say, like, if you feel like you want to see it, pray first. But overall, I don't know what Ryan Coogler's background is. I think let me pull it up. Let's see. Maybe we can find out right now. What is Ryan Coogler's spiritual background? What is Ryan Coogler, the director's? What is Ryan Coogler's spiritual background? So, oops. Ryan. Spiritual background information. Okay. Yep, there we go. Baptist Church. What I tell you? What did I tell you? Raised in a Baptist church, attended a predominantly black Catholic school. His fascination with spirituality and religion has been a significant influence in his work, particularly in his fifth feature film, Sinners. Let me see. Okay, then there's the musical influence as well. Okay. Yeah, I figured as much. So anyway, we'll pray for him. And yeah, cuz like I said, my first passion is films anyway. And that's my first passion. So the only reason I didn't go to film school, and this was like many years ago, I didn't go because I couldn't afford it at the time. Now you don't even really need to go. Like now, just get the right studio equipment and get to shooting. But at the time, yeah, I couldn't afford to go, so I didn't go. But I always wanted to write films, and I wanted to write films in the faith-based sector. Okay, and I'm still gonna create at least one or two films. But anyway, that's my review, you guys. That's my review. Would I say go watch it? No, I wouldn't say go watch it, especially if you're really sensitive in that way. But I will also say, that was, I could see that what he was pushing in the movie. I could see the message clearly. So anyway, talk to you guys later. Bye.